JD here, and as you can see, we are back once again talking about more things that have developed within the F1 community, which I don't think will ever seem to end, but hopefully in the future it can be on some more positive notes rather than controversial. The main topic of today is actually reviewing and discussing the PSGL race that we had at France, which was actually over a week ago now. It's something I always like to not react instantly to when things have gone on, just kind of let time see if anything else develops further from it. But yeah, today we will definitely be focusing on that. But before I start, something I would actually like to provide a little bit of an update on is my last video, which was about Alvaro Carreton. And if you haven't seen that, then Alvaro was caught or appears to have an F1 grip mod folder that he accidentally opened whilst he was streaming his league race, which was also at France PSGL. And many of you guys had very different opinions on this. However, one thing I do want to make clear from that video is that Alvaro did not, in fact, delete any of his recent streams. The ones that he did in the PSGL E series, which I pointed out, he actually did those on the Williams esports account. So he hasn't deleted any streams. The only one he removed was obviously that one where that folder did come to light, but yeah, he hasn't removed anything else other than that. And also in regards to his statement, it seems like Codemasters, and might be something I just kind of brushed over myself, but Codemasters doesn't look like they have actually asked the drivers to download and test the cheats. I think the vibe I'm getting, and from the discussions I've had behind the scenes, that the drivers are now actually taking this into their own hands in order to do something about clamping down on this cheating scandal. So I feel it's not just Alvaro, but there are many others who haven't come to the surface yet who do have access to this, because as I said in the video before, that's something we will be touching on in the future. It is quite scary how easily you can get hold of these things, and I think they are trying to take some data, put it forward to Codemasters. But like I said in my last video, I myself don't really have that much confidence right now in Codemasters in them being able to take that data and actually be able to prove or do something about it. And I don't think they will comment on it or do anything, because they want to kind of protect their image. They want to protect F1 esports, because imagine if it did come out that someone had been cheating in F1 esports and they were getting some very good results from that. That is going to completely destroy the integrity of F1 esports, almost on a permanent basis. So in a way, I understand why they're being quite silent on it. I really hope that if they do get this data, they can use it in a way, and they have someone there who has the tools to use it in a way where we don't even need to be making videos on this ever again.
We'll see as Ismail Fassi immediately surpasses it by a couple of hundredths of a second. Max Wissel pops into the third in the Aston Martin, and then Alvaro Carreton slotting in front of his new esports counterpart. But there is Otis Lawrence and Donoso now. Donoso again, great turn of pace last week, but again hasn't quite been able to convert just yet. But up to the front now is Fabrizio Donoso, who's been looking really good. Barry Borman also pops in at 29.5, so it's incredibly close as per usual. What's Ronar got in the bag? Let's see on his first runs on those soft tyres. Pops across the line and goes a full 2/10 quicker, as we would expect from Thomas Ronar.
Yeah, 8th fastest for Jake Benham as well, but Thomas Ronar going quickest of anybody, a 1:29.331, and that is over 2.5 tenths quicker than Fabrizio Donoso.
The kind of trigger point of this was once again an incredibly impressive Q1 lap, which we will be breaking down with some clips and you'll be seeing on the screen shortly. It's now actually been 2 races in a row, and I think it might have been in other races as well, like his WOR Bahrain Q1 lap. Now it's going to be his PSGL France Q1 lap, where the gap between him and second place has actually been bigger than the gap from second to last. And not just for me, but also with many other drivers within the community, this is why people are actually talking about this and questioning whether he is legit or not. And like I've always said, it's certainly not impossible. You can and do have people who are simply that better and kind of a freak talent. But many people do raise that the level of consistency that he is doing this every time out of the box on every single track, the gap he has to arguably the most stacked competition we have ever seen in F1 esports or the F1 community, where 99% of drivers now are committing to this on a full-time basis, is quite sensational, to say the least. More so, I know people have mentioned that he has done it on the land, something we touched on one of my other videos. He's proved it on the land already. He has been the fastest on Xbox, but it wasn't at this level of dominance. And without being disrespectful to drivers and other platforms, because I've been on that platform myself, they are not on the same level as what F1 esports drivers are right now, mainly down to just their experience, down to the console limitations, and also just them not being able to commit to this on a 100% full-time basis. He's been very, very fast in the time trials and everything such as that. But in terms of actually racing and competing in leagues, even as little as 2 to 3 years ago, he hasn't dominated leagues on that. And I would say, although a fast driver, the amount that he has improved in quite a short amount of time is very, very exceptional. We can say that.
What in the Bergman? Oh.
Okay, the start was fine. Let's try and move forward.
And as you can see, there were quite a few controversial moments from that PSGL race at France. And again, mainly surrounding Thomas Ronhaar. The first kind of trigger point was his, once again, his very incredibly impressive Q1 lap, which we will be breaking down with some clips. For many people within the community and drivers, this is one of the main reasons why they are questioning his legitimacy. Like I've always said, I believe it is not impossible. You can and do have people who are simply just that much better. But to do it with this level of consistency, every time out of the box, on every single track, quickest in all departments, whether that's in the top speed, low speed, medium speed, high speed, ability to get on the traction, as you can see from some of the clips here, is quite sensational. And not to mention, I would say, the competition that we have now in the world of F1 esports is probably the most stacked that it has ever been, because 99% of drivers are now doing this on a full-time basis. And you can see from those clips, and you'll probably see it now, you can see some of the drivers seem like they are kind of actually taking out their frustration on Thomas Ronhart. And for my personal opinion, this is not something I really want to see. I think league racing, especially in a league such as good and big as PSGL, other leagues such as WR, there are many, many out there. You always want to see drivers competing at the best of their ability to try and do it with as much respect as possible, regardless of what people think or whatever. I think, seeing this at this level is not really good for the community right now. So, again, as respectfully as you can, maybe put down what you think of this and what your opinion is. Because I think when this is happening and leagues are doing this and the races are now becoming quite toxic, this is where it does warrant an investigation. And I think, again, like I said before, the way kind of Thomas Ronhart has dealt with this, I know he's very, very young, still 17 years old, whether that's his team or whether it's upon himself. I think just to kind of protect his own interest, does need to actually respond to this in some way. And one of the ways I think he really can do that is to actually maybe jump on an Xbox. He definitely has one because he has competed on it before. And even if he just beats the Q1 times of the guy who's been in second place, so when he's had a 10th and a half, 2/10 gap, if he can get even within a 10th and a half of what he has achieved in a Q1 on PC, around a lot of tracks, maybe jumping on Suzuka Time Trial, getting within a 10th of that, or just a 10th and a half, because he's got almost a 2/10 gap in that world record. Although that might not actually prove 100% anything, I think that is really going to validate him much, much more, because, as I said, there are absolutely no doubts that Thomas Ronhart is an exceptionally fast driver. I've personally raced against him myself 2 to 3 years ago on the highest level of Xbox at that time. And one thing I will say again is I think his rate of progression has been pretty extraordinary. Yes, he was one of the fastest on Xbox, had many, many world records, but when it came to league racing and even qualifying, things like that, he definitely was not as dominant as other drivers I've seen, such as the likes of Oster Lawrence, who, for me, when I competed against him on this game directly, I would say is probably the best driver that I have directly competed against. And you can see, although congratulations on his recent win in PSGL, you can see in many other races it hasn't been particularly easy for him, and you can see how dominant he was. So I would say, I know we have different games and people can improve and get better, but when you see him struggling and not having a gap to the field, and then seeing Ronhart when he first joined PC, I think at the end of 21 and start of 22, he didn't have that advantage, but then to now have this advantage in every department at every track, that is kind of the reason why people are questioning it. And I think, again, like I said, for his own interest and his own sake, I think maybe just making a statement, jumping on Xbox, trying to ignore the problem and be silent is often the most deafening of responses. And you can see by some of his comments where he kind of seems a bit perplexed why drivers are maybe racing against him in this way, which I don't know if it's just been a little bit naive or that's just his way of dealing with things. But, for his own interest and just for the sake of the community and the integrity of esports right now, and to protect his own reputation in the future, because if he came to a LAN and wasn't performing, then that is really going to protect him much, much more. However, actually, Ronhart hasn't seemed to be quite at the level he used to be in the past couple of races. He's actually switched to a load cell brake, which I don't know if anyone can tell me 100%, but apparently he wasn't using one before. And to my knowledge, I thought you did have to use a load cell brake in F1 Esports, which I think was the V3s this year, rather than the CSL Elite load cell. Since then, his electric pace, although he has still been fast, because I don't think there was any denying of that, the advantage he has over the field definitely hasn't seemed to be the same. And you would think, arguably in time, as scary as this thought is, a load cell brake would actually allow him to have even more consistency with his left foot, because you definitely develop a much better muscle memory by the force you put into something rather than the distance if you're talking about how you're using the brakes. So, yeah, maybe someone can confirm that for me on what F1 Esports did use. But if he hasn't used the low cell brake, then that is going to be very, very interesting for the future. Some people have raised within the community on whether this is maybe a ploy to try and take the heat off, because if someone wasn't performing legitimately and they kept on having this gap to the field, I would think the pressure just keeps on rising and rising for you to constantly deliver at this level. But some may say and have said that this might be his way of trying to, get things back to normal, have an explanation of why maybe there is a bit of a drop in pace, because if there is no explanation and his pace just drops and he doesn't have this advantage to the field out of nowhere all of a sudden, then obviously the noise is going to be surrounding that even more. But yeah, I think it's going to be very, very interesting in the future. F1 Esports 100% needs to be on a LAN, and it needs to have an anti-cheat system online. And Codemasters do need to confirm that for the next game, because otherwise I think we're going to be seeing many more things like this and having discussions where people are just going to continue doubting drivers. And with the rewards on the line now, $750,000, I think it's going up to $1 million most likely for next F1 Esports. With the backing of F1 behind them and EA, this is something that we shouldn't have to be even questioning at this point. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Please let me know your thoughts on these recent events. Keep the comments respectful with an open mind, and I'll be catching you very, very soon. Peace.